You know, who would have thought Disney would be able to make a character as cruel as Cruella de Vil a likable and even a sympathetic character?
I guess they were always scared that I'd be a psycho.
I wasn't really sure how to really feel going into Cruella because the trailers and the marketing of the movie didn't really do too much for me. Basically, the big selling point of the movie for me was the fact that Emma Stone was in it. Emma Stone is great in everything she does, and I think a lot of times we tend to underrate her, which I think is kind of crazy considering how many great performances she has given. And the other great thing this movie has going for it is the fact that Emma Thompson's in it, and Emma Thompson is great. And in many ways, this movie is basically a battle in between Emma Stone and Emma Thompson, and their characters, the Baroness and Cruella de Vil, going at each other. And it's great. They both do a phenomenal job, and the costume design in this movie is absolutely great. I wouldn't be surprised. I know we still have about 7 months to go in the year, but I wouldn't be surprised if this movie ends up pulling off the Oscar for best costume design. And as far as just acting itself goes, going back to Emma Stone for a second, Emma Stone, depending on how the rest of the year shapes out, she may very well be nominated for best actress this coming Oscar season. But now, how is the movie? And to be honest, I really enjoyed this movie. Very, very much. Now, if you have kids, I would say if your kids are of the age 10 years or younger, I probably wouldn't go and take them to this movie. And it's not because the movie is like too violent or anything. It's just with the runtime being at 2 hours and 15 minutes and with a lot of kind of story and plot elements, it seems to be a lot more mature of a movie to the point where I don't think anybody under the age of 10 would really like it. They might like certain aspects, but then the majority of the movie they might find just kind of boring. Whereas more mature people will find this movie more entertaining. So I would probably hold off if you have a 10-year-old or under, at least taking them to the movie. And I would rather just, if I were you, probably just stick with renting it from Disney Plus for now. But the entire movie itself, I wasn't expecting it to be as dramatic as it ended up being, and it even has like a heist plot element to it, which I found absolutely great. The cinematography was good. The entire like 60s type soundtrack they have in the movie is great. Sometimes where the soundtrack gets played, it feels like a little like they just felt like they needed to add a song, and maybe the song doesn't really go with the scene. But for the most part, most of the music worked really well. And like I said earlier with the costume design was absolutely fantastic. Paul Walter Hauser, who plays Horace in the movie, also really, he's like the comedic relief, and I found him to be very, very funny. He first came on my radar when I went and saw Richard Jewell about a year ago. He was great in that movie, and it's really cool to see him getting some more work, and he was great as Horace in this movie. And that's kind of the one thing this movie really has going for it, is just all across the board, it's just a solid movie. Like, there's not really a certain aspect in this movie I can really point to and say, you know, they could have done this better. I tried to kind of think of any sort of negative element I could talk about when it came to this movie, and there's not really many negatives. I mean, I did say there was a few song choices that kind of felt a little bit out of place, but for the most, I mean, the acting was solid by everybody. The story, while I did say the runtime was 2 hours and 15 minutes, it doesn't really feel like too much could have been shaven off. I mean, really, it seems like when they got into the editing bay of this movie, they condensed it as much as they could have, and then they put it into theaters. And for the most part, everything works great. It's all well paced and everything. Sometimes when I'm in a movie theater, I tend to check my watch and see, oh, okay, is this movie almost over or whatever? And whenever I do that, that's how you know that the movie's having pacing problems. I didn't check my watch one time in this movie. So for me, the pacing was great, and the 2 hour and 15 minute runtime is not bad, unless I would say you had like little kids or anything. But for the most part, would I recommend Cruella? I would absolutely recommend Cruella. Seeing it in the theaters is also really good as well. The sound and seeing the costume designs on the big screen is absolutely amazing, as well as hearing the soundtrack and everything on the loudspeakers. So go and see Cruella. You will not be disappointed.
I'm glad that